Yo, what's going on, guys? It's your boy, Atypical Security Guard. I want to welcome you to today's episode of Security Guard Radio. Today, we'll be talking about the difference between good and bad policing. I was listening to a fellow YouTuber in the security space. He was talking about an interaction with a couple of bad cops, talked about the rudeness in which he experienced when he had called for them to show up to help trespass an individual on private property, and just in general had a bad experience. And so, from his video, there have been multiple people who have commented, a couple of different security guard centered YouTube channels that have kind of chimed in about the situation and given their opinion of it. And today I wanted to weigh in. This is something that as security professionals we deal with, unfortunately, all too often. It's the lack of desire for a lot, not all, but for a lot of law enforcement individuals to actually just do their job. Now, a lot of people will say, and some have said, that the things that private security individuals call law enforcement for, that they're small, that they're trivial, and that law enforcement officers have bigger and better, more important things to do. And to that, I say absolutely not. No, sir. Listen, all of us, whether you are a private citizen or whether you are a security officer working in the capacity of your job, we are all tax-paying citizens. Part of that responsibility of being a law enforcement officer is to answer the calls that come in. That's the big calls for service, and it's also the little calls for service. The things that we are mandated to contact law enforcement for, whether that's trespassing, loitering, minor shoplifting, minor acts of aggression, whatever it is that we as security officers are mandated to contact law enforcement for, whether by law or by policy, the police department, the police officers should respond in kind. Why? Because that's their job. It's literally what they're paid to do. And I understand that on a long enough timeline, the minuscule calls for service that police officers respond to on a daily basis, day after day after day, they have to get annoying, they have to get mundane, they have to get absolutely just ridiculous in terms of what they think about those calls. And I can respect that. I can 110% respect that. But you still have to do your job. Everything that we deal with in a security capacity, a lot of those issues are mundane. A lot of those issues are, trivial. But that's the job that we signed up for. I do not give any credence or pass to police officers who take the attitude that they are above responding to the things that we are mandated to have them respond to. Now, is there a limit to how many times we should be contacting law enforcement? Should we be, thinking about whether or not we have to make that phone call? Should we be a little bit more cautious with how much we rely on law enforcement? Sure. There's a level of responsibility that goes with being a security officer and doing the job to the best of our ability and not overstepping. But in and of itself, calling the police for trespassing, calling the police for loitering, that is not outside the bounds of what we should be doing. And it's not outside the scope of the work that the police officers should be responding to. In 2020, in 2021, all the way into 2022, this is what we would hear so many times when we were calling for help from the police department, that we don't have the manpower to answer these types of calls, that we don't have the staff to dedicate to simple things like this. We have bigger and more important things to address. And to me, that is the wrong approach. I am all for utilizing security to deal with things in certain capacities. I'm all for security being more responsible for the properties that they are working on. But these are things that are far above the security officer, the security guard. To a large degree, it's above the stores. It's above the contracts. This is something that would have to come from the state level. And unfortunately, another issue that I have with the police department is that they are not advocating to work with private security. If the issue is manpower, the issue is staffing, the issue is the ability to address some of these smaller issues, then the police department should be pushing and advocating for more authority for private security so that they do not have to respond to these things. They have the inroad, they have the backing of the state, they have the financial ability to do so. They could be pushing and advocating for more authority at the private security level. Hell, they could be advocating for private security to be working alongside and with law enforcement. They could be helping to provide training. They could be helping to, to provide a completely different avenue for what security guards are able to do and trained to do, to take a little bit of that weight off the shoulders of the police department. That would be a more proactive way of going about the situation. But to not advocate for that and at the same time refuse to do the job and answer these calls because the attitude is that it's beneath them, that is not acceptable in my opinion. I think a lot of you have dealt with law enforcement officers that have given you bad attitudes, law enforcement officers, that have been out of line, law enforcement officers who, have made the statement that what you're calling them for is not applicable in their realm. And I do not want you as a security guard to think that that's okay, because it's not. They have a job to do. And sometimes the job that they are being asked to do is to deal with some mundane, everyday, run-of-the-mill bullshit. And we have to do it too. Every single person that works a job has to deal with the mundane. There's no acceptable reason why a police officer should have a negative attitude when they're interacting with a security guard. And I will say that goes both ways. There's no acceptable reason why a security guard should ever be out of line with a police officer. That respect, it goes both ways. You give and you get it. And it shouldn't be tolerated under any circumstances. I don't care what you're dealing with. I don't care where you're going. I don't care where you're coming from. The fact that you didn't get enough sleep or you don't feel, in a good mood that day. It's not okay for us as security guards to be out of line. There should not be any excuses made for police officers. If anything, they should be setting the example for us to follow. It's simple respect. And I don't want any of you guys as security officers or security guards to think, because some people are telling you that, you're in the wrong for making that call. More than likely, that's what you're being told to do. That's what's in your policy. That's what's in your standing post orders, your operating procedures. As security guards, we don't have the authority to either do or not do something. A lot of what we're doing and what we're talking about in terms of when we come on this platform and we have these conversations, a lot of these things are not up for debate. If you interact with somebody, you have to trespass this person, it might say in your standard post orders that you have to contact law enforcement. Law enforcement has to come out and issue that trespass or make that criminal trespass arrest. A lot of times it's not up to us. So I don't want you guys to think that it's okay for a police officer to have an attitude. Now, how you go about handling or dealing with that disrespect, that's something that you're going to have to address with your supervisor, with the people in your organization that are well above you. But it all comes down to respect, and that respect needs to go both ways. You guys should not feel obligated to put up with or tolerate that type of attitude from law enforcement. It's not okay. And I want to know what you guys think about this thought process, this idea that I'm sharing right now. Drop your comments and let me know what you guys think. All right? You guys have a great night. Be great.